Hey, what is going on, everyone? Thank you all for watching my video today. Now, in today's video, I just want to give a brief overview of my thoughts on a few NFL free agency moves that happened today pertaining to the quarterback position, because it seems like the NFL's quarterback carousel is starting to wind down outside of the NFL draft next month, or this month, the end of this month. Most of these teams pretty much have their quarterback for the 2022 season, at least in my opinion. Now, the biggest trade that went down today was that the Indianapolis Colts traded their third round selection in the upcoming draft, to the Atlanta Falcons in exchange for the Falcons' longtime franchise quarterback Matt Ryan. Now, Ryan has been with the Falcons since 2008. He's been the NFL MVP, helped them make a Super Bowl, but he's getting into his late 30s now, and the Falcons, they've been in a state of mediocrity for some time now. And after, Julio Jones being traded, Calvin Ridley now getting suspended after missing last season as well for the most part of last season. Russell Gage leaving a free agency. Besides Kyle Pitts, they really don't have a ton of receiving options anymore, and it looks like the Falcons were willing to go in a new direction. They trade Matt Ryan to the Colts to get that pick back, that third round selection. For the Colts, I think this is a great upgrade. Carson Wentz might have had better raw stats than Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan had probably his worst statistical season in some years last year. The first time since 2011 he didn't have 4,000 yards passing. He only had 20 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. He kept the Falcons frisky. They went 7-10, and were in the playoff race until the final few weeks of the season. But nonetheless, it was time to move on, I think, for both teams. I like this trade a lot. Similar to the impact Philip Rivers had on the Colts 2 seasons ago, I think Matt Ryan's going to come in, be a calming veteran presence, and help maximize the talent on that offense. And even more so than Rivers did, because Rivers didn't have Jonathan Taylor at his disposal, at least at the level Jonathan Taylor is playing right now after last season. Jonathan Taylor led the NFL in rushing last year, of course, and with that great Colts offensive line, I think he's going to continue to succeed this season. And I think Matt Ryan's going to succeed. I think the offensive line for the Falcons hasn't been as good as it was a couple of years back. For the past few seasons, it hasn't been as good as it was when the Falcons were contenders. So I think this will be a good change of pace for Ryan in terms of protection. Michael Pittman, I think, is a great receiver to have. Julio Jones he had for a long time. It's hard to compare someone to Julio Jones, but Michael Pittman's better than anyone the Falcons had over the past 2 seasons, I would say, because of Calvin Ridley's inconsistent attendance with the team, to say the least. And the Colts overall, their defense is really solid, and I think I would actually say that the acquisition of Matt Ryan does put the Colts in the driver's seat in the AFC South. I think the Colts overall, they're a very well run organization. I think GM Chris Ballard does a great job. I think they have a good coach in Frank Reich. I think they have a good O line, a good defense, good running back, one of the best in the league, and I think Matt Ryan will be a stabilizer for the rest of the offense that allows the Colts to make the playoffs. Now, once they get to the playoffs, I don't anticipate a far playoff run for them. Just as I've been over many times in my previous videos, the AFC is just stacked, and especially that AFC West. But even teams like the Bills, the Browns, maybe even the Bengals and the Raiders. Definitely the Bengals, maybe the Ravens. I think all those teams are better than the Colts. It's gonna be rough for them to win a playoff game, but I think they will get to the playoffs one way or the other. Uh, Now looking at the quarterback the Falcons will be replacing Matt Ryan with, that's Marcus Mariota, the former Titans quarterback, the division rival of the Colts. He played the last 2 seasons with the Raiders as the backup to Derek Carr. He had a really good game filling in for Derek Carr back in the 2020 season, in his lone start with the Raiders. So he gets a 2-year, $18 million deal, which is actually less money than he got to be the Raiders' backup. He got 2 years, $28 million on his previous contract, and I think this signing works a lot. Arthur Smith, his former offensive coordinator in Tennessee, reunites with him. I think Mariota can be, he can at least be a solid running quarterback. Him and Cordarrelle Patterson could probably do some damage on the ground. Mariota as a passer, he's been very inconsistent throughout his career. He's had some good seasons if you look at his touchdown interception ratios. Even the year he got benched as the starter in favor of Ryan Tannehill, I think he had like 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and he had no interceptions coming into the game he was benched, but he threw 2 interceptions, causing Mike Vrabel to bench him for Tannehill. But in the past 2 years, Mariota, I think his stock has kind of improved since he left the Titans because of that good game with the Raiders. Is really all we've seen of him. We have a good memory of his most recent performance, and I think he'll do decent with the Falcons. I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons take a quarterback in this draft, but I would also be really surprised if that quarterback does play for the next season as a starter, I think Mariota will be the starter unless he performs poorly, which I think he'll play good enough to keep the starting job all season. And from there, maybe in the 2023 season, he'll wind up getting benched for this rookie. But as we know, this quarterback draft class, most agree that it's very weak. So all the quarterbacks, even the top quarterbacks like Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, some consider to be projects. So I could totally see them taking a backseat to Mariota in their rookie seasons in Atlanta. And finally, the other quarterback who signed, he actually stayed with his former team. Jameis Winston re-signed with the Saints on a 2-year, $28 million deal. Now he's coming off the torn ACL, but reports seem to say that he'll be able to, if he's not ready for opening day, opening week, he'll be able to get back to the Saints within the first half of the season. And for the Saints, I mean, I don't think they're necessarily going to be Super Bowl threats by any means, but I do think that if Jameis is able to play like he did while he was the starter last year, if he's able to return from the injury, if Michael Thomas returns to the team, if the Saints defense continues to play well like it has over the past pretty much half decade, I do think the Saints could have a shot to sneak in the playoffs in that 6 or 7 seed. The NFC is very weak. Besides, I'd say the Packers, the Rams, the Niners, and the Buccaneers, I can't say there's any guaranteed playoff teams next year across all the divisions. And even the Packers need to get some receivers. I'm kind of expecting them to upgrade at wide receiver as the offseason goes along. But if the Packers don't, there might be a slight chance they don't win the division. But like the main point that I'm trying to say is that the NFC is very weak, and there's a possibility James could lead the Saints to the playoffs. He didn't have them far off when he got hurt. I think they were even like 6-2, 6-3 at that point. But after the injury, they fell off because Taysom Hill is not a real NFL starting quarterback. But Jameis, hopefully he gets the shot to start once he comes back from the injury. I think he could perform well. It's kind of funny. Mariota and Jameis, they both signed today. You know, the former top 2 picks in the 2015 draft. Kind of weird how their careers have turned out. They're not having bad careers whatsoever. Obviously, they weren't worthy of those top 2 selections. But it's kind of weird that they kind of always seem to find new paths around the same time. You know, they both had some strange moments. They both left for new teams starting in the 2020 season, with Jameis going from Tampa to New Orleans, Mariota going from the Titans to the Raiders, and now today they both signed 2-year deals to get paid as expected starting quarterbacks. So, you know, I think both of them are solid players. Especially, I like Jameis more than Mariota, but I think they're both solid players. I think they could both be solid stopgaps for the imminent future for their new NFC South franchises. And with Matt Ryan departing the NFC South for the Colts, I think he gives the Colts, as I said, a chance to make the playoffs. I think he walks away from Atlanta with a great resume. I think he's the best quarterback by far in Falcons history. Mike Vick, you know, he has the highlights. He has the Madden cover. He's just more fun. But Matt Ryan, accomplishments-wise, making the Super Bowl, winning the MVP, making the playoffs very consistently for some time, I think that gives him the edge in Atlanta Falcons history, and he should be proud of the career he had in Atlanta. But now he moves on to greener pastures in Indianapolis. So that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys for watching. Not much more to talk about the NFL offseason outside of the draft. Still some decent free agents. I'm sure a couple more signings will be worth talking about. For the most part, the excitement of that period is kind of over. I'm hoping that I can do some more NBA content as the playoffs approach. I'm going to have some 6 episodes of my Trust the Podcast, 76ers podcast coming up. The Rights to Ricky Sanchez guys, if you know about them, they're big Sixers podcast. They released a Field of 64 March Madness bracket about Sixers process moments that I'm excited. I'm going to get to fill out. I'm going to fill it out on one of the next episodes of the podcast. Also going to have, of course, a reaction to the next few set of games. Other than that, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching.